Jordan Grand Prix first entered Formula 1 in 1991. Jordan had previously been greatly successful in British Formula 3 and Formula 3000, seeing the likes of Eddie Irvine, Damon Hill, Jean Alesi and Martin Brundle driving for the team. The team immediately caught the eyes of viewers with a fantastic-looking Jordan 191, and good-looking cars were going to become a common theme with the Jordan Grand Prix team. It was the Jordan 191 that was Michael Schumacher's first ever Formula 1 car, and Jordan Grand Prix would make a habit of picking up young drivers: Rubens Barrichello, Eddie Irvine, Ralf Schumacher, Timo Glock, and of course the most famous of all, Narain Karthikeyan. They were all drivers who started out at Jordan Grand Prix. It'd be Rubens Barrichello who would get the team's first pole position in the 1994 Belgian Grand Prix, unfortunately failing to finish the race. But back to 1991, this car would become many viewers' favourite F1 car of all time. It was iconic, a car that exemplified early 1990s Grand Prix car design. It's like what an artist would produce if you told them to make a 1990s F1 car. The very slightly raised yet still low nose connected to an anhedral front wing with the wingtips as low as they could possibly get them to go, making sparks as they scraped along the surface of the road. The 191 might not have been the fastest car of the early 90s, but it was the car. It was the 90s Grand Prix car equivalent of the F16. If you ask someone to draw a fighter jet without telling them what sort to draw, they'll draw something looking like an F16. The same goes for the Jordan 191. The 191 would go on to finish 5th in the Constructors' Championship. The following year, they brought the 192, which looked very similar to the 191, but with a new colour scheme. But underneath the engine cover, they replaced the old Ford V8 with a Yamaha V12. It was a terrible engine and the team dropped to 11th in the World Constructors' Championship. But 1993 would see Jordan bring a more innovative car, the 193. The 193 had a high nose with a wing attached using pylons. It was not the first F1 car to have a pylon-mounted wing, but it was one of the first ever. Even McLaren, Ferrari and Williams still used conventional low noses at the time. The pylon-mounted front wing would become the front wing strategy of choice all the way until 2022, when regulation changes forced the teams to use a more 1980s style of front wing. But the pylon-mounted front wing hasn't fallen out of favour because it's a bad design, only because the teams aren't allowed to use them anymore. That being said, the pylon wing does appear to be making a comeback for 2026, with the renderings of how an F1 car could look, possibly in 2026, showing a front wing attached to the nose by two very short pylons. The front wing pylon-winged 193 would be powered by the Hart 1035 V10, but the car was unreliable. At least one Jordan car would retire from all but 3 rounds in 1993, leading to the team staying in 11th in the Constructors' Championship. In 1994, Jordan would curiously return to an anhedral front wing attached directly to the nose, and this would be an even lower nose than their 1991 and 1992 car. It was fast though, bringing the team back up to 5th in the Constructors' Championship. For 1995, Jordan would go for a more radical car, opting for a full low-nose design with a straight wing, right as the rest of the teams were starting to go to a high-nose concept with pylons. The car featured extremely narrow side pod inlets. This is unlike the Mercedes Zero Pod concept, since the side pods themselves were still big. The other big change was one you can't see from the outside. The car now had a Peugeot engine, but it wasn't as fast as the last year's car. It slipped to 6th in the Constructors' Championship. For 1996, they stuck with Peugeot engines, but once again returned to a pylon-mounted front wing. This car would have a strange double side pod inlet and would see the beginning of the most iconic Jordan livery ever, the bright yellow with red accents. For some reason, halfway through the season, they decided to make the car brown, which didn't look very good, which is why they made it yellow again for 1997. Also gone were the weird side pods, with conventional ones taking their place. In 1997, Jordan would also switch to Honda V10s in their cars. It'd also see the beginning of Jordan's funny ways of avoiding tobacco advertising laws. The sponsor, Benson & Hedges, would have its name changed to Bitten & Hisses. in countries that banned tobacco ads. A snake's head would be painted on the nose of the car in a way that's reminiscent of a World War II fighter plane's nose art. In 1998, they'd replace the snake with a hornet, and the slogan would become Buzzin' Hornets. And in this same year, they'd signed Damon Hill to join Ralf Schumacher at the team. At the Belgian Grand Prix, chaos would ensue, and the result was Jordan winning the race with a 1-2, and Damon Hill taking victory. This would help Jordan finish 4th in that year's Constructors' Championship. For 1999, the Hornet would stay, but Ralf Schumacher would not. Michael Schumacher was furious that team orders prevented his brother winning the 1998 Belgian Grand Prix, and the drama that ensued led to Heinz-Harald Frentzen joining the Jordan team to drive alongside the 1996 world champion Damon Hill. Well, also should have won in 1994, but whatever. The 1999 season would see Damon Hill not perform as well as his teammate in his final season of F1, but Jordan would see their best year ever, finishing 3rd in the World Constructors' Championship, with Frentzen finishing 3rd in the Drivers' Championship, picking up 2 Grand Prix victories. In 2000, the Jordan EJ10 would keep the Hornet on the livery, and Jarno Trulli would join Frentzen to drive the car, but Jordan's performance would begin to drop off from here onwards. Even replacing the Hornet with a Shark didn't help in 2001. But in 2003, the Brazilian Grand Prix would be especially chaotic, with trackside beginning to look more like a war zone than a racetrack, with destroyed cars lining the tracksides. It was in this race that Jordan Grand Prix would take its last ever victory after a long legal discussion over the post-race countback. This would be just one of 3 rounds where the team would score points on their way to finishing 9th in the Constructors that year. They'd finish in this position for the next 2 years, with the team sold to the Midland Group in 2005, who then sold it to Spiker for a profit not long after. Clever investment from Midland. Spiker would sell that to Vijay Mallya to create Force India, and this team would eventually become Aston Martin. But even when the team name changed, the fighting spirit of Jordan Grand Prix lived on through the team's many memorable performances. Giancarlo's pole position at the 2009 Belgian Grand Prix, right where Jordan secured their first pole in 1994, or Perez's many podiums with the team. The team always punched above their weight, despite Vijay Mallya's personal finances nearly sinking the team. Racing Point and then Aston Martin would continue this legacy, despite much disorganisation picking up in the team at around the time of Force India's collapse. But there is one thing that the Jordan Grand Prix team was perhaps most famous for. It wasn't its win in Spa 1998, nor its greatest season in 1999. It was perhaps most famous for its team principal, the late, great Eddie Jordan. Eddie Jordan was perhaps the most iconic team principal there ever was in Formula One, and to most of the viewers, he was simply the most charismatic and likeable team principal the paddock could have asked for, and he'll be missed by everyone involved in Formula One.